Hey guys, this is the Imperfect Together podcast with Zach and Chris. Chris is not here because he has COVID, but he will be back here next week, and hopefully we can unpack that a little bit and see what his experience was. But in the meantime, I have Tim Goodman. He's a writer. He's a doctor. He's a paramedic. He's a flight attendant. What else? You're a lot of things. And he's also a speech person. So if you ever want someone to talk at your conferences, this is your guy.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so there's that. But today, so while I was trying to figure out what to talk about, I was like, man, Tim knows a lot of things. What's something that he probably doesn't know about? And what I came up with, guys, you guys have been talking about it. You kids have been talking about it for weeks. And today's the day we are going to talk about and unravel what is Lil Nas X.
You did find what I have zero knowledge of.
All right, thoughts on Lil Nas X? Do you know anything about Lil Nas X?
Just a little of the research that I did just to kind of familiarize. There were some things that jumped out.
Yeah, like what?
Well, he seems to have this shock value that really is in vogue at this point.
Yeah. You would say that he's kind of like the Madonna of...
He does have a lot of similarities.
21, like Madonna was like, oh, check out my legs, in the 80s, and everyone's like, oh. But Lil Nas X is a little bit more severe. But anyway, go on.
That was almost spot on impression of Madonna, by the way, but yeah. I was intrigued in the research that I found that his father is a gospel singer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so a lot of the talent, but a lot of the imagery that I saw just looking at some of the videos and things to prepare has a lot of imagery that creates such a backlash in the Christian culture, but has probably more, it's not just the symbology that is he wants to use for representation, but there is a different understanding. And I think he is not completely misunderstood. I think that there are things that people want to lash out about, but...
the Christian community is very upset with Lil Nas X. It could be the outfits at the Met Gala that could, frustrate people. I saw the outfits. They seemed, normal, I guess. Not normal. He dressed up as a king, at one, and then another one like a golden Power Ranger, and then another one as, I forgot what the other one he dressed up as. But there's that. He also had a pregnancy photo shoot to give birth to his new album called Montero. Man. And that was his new album that came out. I don't know when it came out. But he came out with an album, and then what Christians are very upset. They're upset with that album. They're upset with some music videos that he did. And he was also, the thing that really topped it off were the Satan shoes. Mm-hmm. Whenever he made those Satan shoes, people were not happy. And then today was the first time that I actually looked at the Satan shoes. Do you know there's scripture on there?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. I was like, man, that's bold. Putting scripture on some shoes. But it says but I'm going to read the verse. Because I was like, man, it's a Luke 10:18. And it's actually Jesus talking. And I was like, man, what is he trying to, is this, are we in a, not a predicament, but like a paradigm, And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. Which I'm reading that and I'm going, well, Jesus is saying to stomp on the serpents and the scorpions, not on Christians. But he's like, I give you authority to do that. And so I'm a little confused of why he put that scripture on there. But I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't know what the Bible is. I don't. I'm confused about it.
Well, at risk
Maybe
of
just because there's Satan in the name, like
mhm.
Satan in the quote.
At risk of making Christians upset who may
Yeah.
think differently than me, I think the guy's a marketing genius.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, he
Yeah.
took Luke 10:18. He sold them for $1,018 per pair.
Yeah.
He has a set of shoes, and he talks about treading on and
Mm-hmm.
the Satan shoes that saw Satan cast out of heaven. And it's just that pushback against, and reading some of the articles, the fact that he came out as being gay and
Yeah.
has for so long, and we'll talk about that, I'm
Yep.
sure, later on, but the fact that the Christian community just, that has been a hammer point for
Mm-hmm.
years and years and years. And now he has this platform that so few actually have, other than just to
Yeah.
do this on Sundays. He's kind of taken all of the imagery, and he's taken all of these references, and he's taken things that do really not go together with that verse particularly, but they do come
Yeah.
together to create this flurry.
Yeah.
And that's all that marketing is in
Yeah.
some cases. So.
Yeah. The quote that he gave, Lil Nas X, after the release of the Satan shoes and Montero, he goes, I spent my entire teenage years hating myself because all of the explicit y'all preached would happen to me because I was gay. So I hope you are mad. Stay mad. Feel the same anger you teach us to have towards ourselves. And that was on Twitter. What do you think about that statement?
I think it's indicative of the attitude that is felt from those that live in the gay community,
Mm-hmm.
that feel that the church and Christians in general have approached and attacked them. I feel like that's something that has been propagated from
Yep.
not just belief, but the misunderstanding of dealing with people.
Mm-hmm.
That separation, and we've heard it for how long? It's we love the sinner, hate the sin kind of thing. But when you're sitting on the other side, when you're doing what you're doing and being attacked for what you're doing, it's a personal attack,
Yeah.
regardless of what it is. We have all felt that. And I think a lot of the frustration and fury that is being unleashed are the fact that people are no longer living with this process toward congeniality toward everyone.
Yeah.
If you're going to attack me, then we're going to push back, and we're going to attack back.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're seeing that being played out.
Yeah.
If you go back to the first church, you go back to the early times of Christianity, that was the thing that people were persecuted for being Christians, and they were in that same boat, and they began pushing back. Now, I'm not saying it's legitimized by any means, but we need to understand that history will repeat itself, even if it's not in a pattern that we want to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like just from that statement and the way that he's using these, he is looking to pick a fight, and he is drawing out the ire and anger of Christian people in the Christian community and validating his point.
Yeah.
So what he's doing is creating this marketing brand again, but he's also creating this scenario where he is having validation by the response that he's
Mm-hmm.
getting from that Christian community.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with that. So you were talking about like how like he felt distant from Christianity and from the church because of how other people viewed him and all that stuff. You know, how can we, let me try to figure out how to say this. How can we love someone who we completely disagree with?
That's a good question. It's tough. It's tough to do so. I think we have to understand that people are just going to have different ideas and different opinions.
Yep.
We have to get past the fact that we have to win every argument.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's always been a weakness of mine, is I feel that I have the ability to communicate to people why their argument is invalid. And so my goal at one point in my life was just to win arguments. Well, creating that just creates a divide.
Yeah.
I think loving people is the fact that we come to a place where we just have to see every person that we encounter as a mirror.
Yeah.
The things that we don't like in their life, they don't necessarily reflect that person. They reflect maybe choices they made or things that they've been taught or things that for whatever reason they are hanging on to, because just in the situation as this, that there has been some lash against them.
Yep.
So when we begin to see people and we look at them and we see a mirror and we see how we treat them is how we're going to be treated back, or how we treat them is going to create an opportunity for them to treat us in a manner that would be unpleasant or unchristian. We see that challenge becomes one that doesn't fall to anyone doing the right thing. It falls to what we are willing to do in order to see beyond.
Mm-hmm. So how can we meet them where they are?
That's a good question too. It's, as an old guy,
Yeah.
I live.
Tell me your old man knowledge.
I live in a different, from a different era and with a different mindset, I think, than a lot of the people nowadays that face these challenges every day. The things that kids face in school, the things that kids face online and social media, the social media presence that is almost demanded of them, even to be able to function in their schoolwork. It creates such a vacuum into certain areas that draws out a negative side, because what we want to do is we divide ourselves, and the dichotomy of self becomes who we really are when we're alone and who we have to present ourselves to be in that, on that platform or in that context. So to meet people where they are becomes even harder now, because am I meeting them who they are or meeting them where they are? And most times those are not the same. Meeting someone where they are, we have to weed past and go past this persona that they've created, because we all have a social media presence that we want to personify success, or we want to personify our abilities. And a lot of times we feel very inadequate to that. I was thinking on the way over here today about people who truly have experience, and in the world in which I circulate, there is a term, imposter syndrome, that it's thrown around quite a bit. And it's just the belief that maybe I'm not adequate, or I really haven't achieved all the things that I want to gain when I'm in a position to be given that accolade or whatever it may be termed. So I find almost the flip side of that in meeting people where they are, as you said, it's finding out really who they are. And that's the hard part.
What TV shows have you been watching recently? Any good ones?
I don't watch a lot of TV.
Have you ever heard of the show Ted Lasso?
No.
You need to watch it. It's basically about a guy. I just started watching it.
Is this on Netflix?
It's on actually on Apple TV.
Okay.
But it's about this coach that he's like a AA football coach, college football coach that actually won the national championship. And then he actually switched to a soccer league in England.
I've seen a trailer for that, so I do know what.
Yes. But the guy, if you watch it, he's very like outgoing the whole time. So inclusive, so like he asked for the water boy suggestion, and everyone's like, and he's like, no one asked for my name before, you know? But it's like, that's his whole vibe, is just, and he was like, like the way how he talks to people, he's like, oh, he's going to be really mad when I win him over. You know? But the whole time it's like, he's not upset, and he's just loving on people, you know, and he's loving on people too. I mean, I'm in the middle of this. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but what I'm watching right now, I really like. But, so, you know, if you've never read the Bible, you know, be a Ted Lasso. But if you have, you know, when I think of, you know, how can we meet them where they are, you know, I go back to Scripture, which is, you know, how was Jesus with the fishermen? You know, Was he degrading, or was he meeting them where they were? Jesus and the deaf person, was he, oh, what are you doing? Like, you're not on my level. Or was he loving? Jesus and the leper, did he say, oh, no, don't touch me, I'm holy and righteous? No, he got on his level. He touched him, healed him, and then gave him some clothes. And then even Jesus and the tax collector, everyone was furious about that. But at the same time, Jesus was like, hey, I want to have dinner with you. I want to acknowledge you. I want to know you. Jesus and the adulterer, thou, first, whoever has no sin, throw the first stone, like, or the lady in the well. There's so many stories of Jesus getting on their level, because he was fully God and he was also fully man. And he always got right on their level, listened, understood, and then after that, preached something bigger than themselves.
One of the things in relation to that has always struck me as odd, and maybe not odd as much as hurtful, was that the person or persons that Jesus seemed to be the hardest on, not even the disciples who he followed around, watched them screw up all the time, was the religious people.
The Pharisees. And you know what? He actually called them vipers. Do you know who's a viper? A serpent. Do you know in Luke 10:18 where it says, and this is actually on Lil Nas X shoes, it says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions. And so, I mean, with that, Jesus is talking about the Pharisees in that. All these stories about Jesus, he went to their level. He didn't make them feel less than, didn't make them feel like they were not important, but loved them where they were and gave them a true purpose and a new direction. The Pharisees, what you were discussing, were the thorns on his side. Those were the things that he was just like, oh, come on, like, you guys should know this, but they don't. The righteous ones, the ones that supposedly had the keys to the heavens. And so, yeah, it's fascinating that you said that. Yeah, they were, they were vipers. He called them vipers. What Jesus is saying there in Luke 10:18 is, I'm going to, stomp those guys out, like, show them not, don't get mean, don't be aggressive, but just, I think Jesus got angry once, and it was because of the whole tax stuff and all that stuff. But I mean, he was fully man, and he wasn't sinful doing it. It was just kind of, this is not right kind of thing. But every single time, he found a way to love them, and always gave them a time to speak their minds and all that stuff. All right, go on.
And going back to one of the things that stands out over and over throughout history is how imagery is always going to be a source of contention with either the Christian community or outside the Christian community. Whether it's we see now, the Ten Commandments was a big thing for a while, that people were wanting 10 Commandments taken out of buildings, taken out of the public eye. It was Christian imagery people were fighting against. We have this imagery that is given a place with the shoes, and again, not justifying by any means, but one of the things that we can realize when we talk about this is the Christian community really became the most irate and pissed off over the fact that he used a Bible verse. He referenced the devil. He referenced this. They only made 666 of them. All of this imagery, and it almost goes back to a place where we see people becoming frustrated because that element to them is, they're anti-God, they're anti-Bible, they're anti-whatever, it stirs up something because there is a use of what they consider to be sacred. However, the usefulness of the sacred is something we've put on a shelf instead of using it for advancement for
Absolutely.
good. These people have pulled it off, like going into the tabernacle years ago, or into the temple, and ransacking the temple, taking the goods from there, utilizing them. We feel sometimes that way, that we've created this temple and tabernacle that we're not supposed to go in and take the sacred and put it in the real world. Well, now that it's out in the real world, we don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so our first response is always to fight back and to fight it,
Yeah.
which creates then this climate of confusion or chaos or a combativeness even.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
as a matter of perspective, if we took those and just acknowledge the fact that those are not justifying or giving credence to it in any form, but just to know the fact that it's a marketing thing.
Yeah.
He is not the Antichrist. He's not trying to take over the world. He's not trying to change the hearts and minds of everyone.
Yeah.
The imagery that's used in so many of the videos, as following the research there, is very much Christian based. It's very much church based. And people who have a background in church probably do understand the pain and frustration more. As a believer and as a Baptist preacher's kid growing up, I realized there are a lot of things that I took for granted and I didn't feel the pang of because I did the right things. And I wasn't persecuted in that sense.
Yeah, my heart breaks for Lil Nas X, and his story of him feeling like he's an outcast, and how he felt like he wasn't loved or cared for when he needed it the most. Like, with all that being said, like, we need to find a better way to love our neighbor. We need to not be distant from the outcast, but be loving to them as Jesus instructed us to. And I think if we did this, and I think the world would change. Could you imagine if he knew the truth about Christianity and the truth of who God says he is? You know how much of an impact it would be on him, as well as an impact it would be on this culture. But somehow us Christians and us church, drop the ball on that. And
well, can I plug in here?
Yeah.
You think back to several years ago, one of the people who was really criticized and crucified and just hammered time after time by the same community that is doing this again was Justin Bieber. Now, what about his life? What about the things that he's come out and how he has professed to be a believer and changed the course of some of the music that he's producing? And so where is the support for that? I mean, if we're gonna fling the arrows, we should stand behind when that change occurs, and we don't see that. And that's another one of the slaps against the Christian community and believers in general, is the fact that we criticize, and then we do see these positive things that do happen. And some of the same things were said about him years ago. Was, can you imagine if he was on the other side? And now he's on the other side, and there's no support.
No support. Yeah, it's crazy. It's nuts that we do that and that we continue to do that. And it's unfortunate and it's sad.
And being real, just what you said, being real is not just being aware of the attack or making sure that there's the attack, but being real is being honest about it, that we've failed and we need to change some of the things that we do. Yeah,
and I mean, I'm going to quote one of Lil Nas X's songs. It's from That's What I Want, and it says, I'm just going to read it, I'm not going to sing it. I want someone who loves me, I need someone who needs me, 'cause it don't feel right when it's late at night and it's just me and my dreams. So I just want someone to love. That's what I explicit want. But I read that, and yeah, if you watch the music video, it's not a good music video. But if you just read that part, it's like, I mean, that's Jesus, you know, that you're thriving, that you're trying to find through all that. And it breaks me, you know, knowing especially that his dad was a gospel singer and all this stuff, and somehow he still just fell through the cracks because people were judgy about his life choices and all that stuff, you know. And I'm not saying that, you know, what I'm saying is everyone needs to be accepted, not just, you know, straight Christian people, but everyone, you know. If we want to be a church that's accepting to everyone, we need to love everyone. And that's a lot of change that the church is still trying to figure out, you know, and that's a lot of things that, you know, that the culture shift is changing. But I'm like, I mean, we got to love everyone. We got to love everyone. And, you know, even with the Fort Smith schools, you know, I hear stories all the time. Oh, well, they have a strong LGBTQ, you know, thing in the schools. You know, it's a huge following in the schools. And I tell the kids all the time, so what are you doing to love them? What are you doing to love them well? You're telling me a lot about it, but what are you telling? Like, what are we doing? You know, and I'm not saying that we need to love them with the idea of changing their mind. Only God could do that. But instead of just being distant and, oh my gosh, can you believe Antonio over there? You know, instead it's, I'm going to love you, and then watch and look and have them see God's love through us, and then see, hey, you know, whatever that kid's name that was talking to me about that, like, you know, there's something different about you. What is that? You know, and then you're able to have that conversation. And so,
one of the things that you said, real quick, one of the things that you said about the church and the attacks and how he fell through the crack, the research that I saw, that he has only come out and been public about being gay for a couple of years, which means that the church didn't attack him personally.
Yep.
He had to sit and hear the attack in general. The church has always been, to some degree, fearful of the identifiable attack. We want to do it in general, but if it's face to face, we're afraid to do it. That's where we put the mirror to everyone. Hey, I've made mistakes, and that mistake and my mistakes are not really different. That what I consider a mistake, or what mistakes I've made in my life, those are not so far apart. When I look at the mirror of that, I'm attacking some generalized form, but when I can put a face to it, it changes. It's the same as with people who have been in battle, and they talk about the face of the enemy being general, but when you know them and you have to fight. That's why the Civil War was such a devastating thing, is because they fought people that they could face to face recognize and know, and had to encounter some of those. And it was devastating to in ways that we hopefully will never have to face again. But it's the same thing that we do on a spiritual realm now. Is the church proclaims that Jesus is the fulfillment of our needs for peace. We proclaim the fact that we have been created for community. We proclaim the fact that we are to love those with whom we come in contact. And a lot of the thematic aspects of what he sings about in his videos and his songs have those elements in there. And we criticize the fact that there is a desire for those. And we say, oh, if he just did, but we have created this undercut to everything that he says he wants by saying, if you get right, then we can fill those blanks in for you. But until you
it's just
change,
pushing them further away every time we say, Lil Nas X, and it makes them. I mean, I would do that if I was, if I, wasn't in church, or if I didn't know truth, and then I made a statement or something like that, and then the Christians came at me, I'd see ya. But I was blessed, that didn't happen. But I know a lot of stories of a lot of students that have experienced that, and it is sad. And if you're listening to this, and you're listening to this podcast, or what have yous, know, you know, that's not Christianity, you know, getting pushed away or feeling less of. That's not who we are, and that's not what it is. Any last words before we end this? I feel like we gotta go. It's getting close to the time.
It's been interesting to hear perspective. It's been interesting to research this because, again, this is not a generational portion of my life. But to see...
Steely Dan, I'm all in.
Don't push it. But some of the things...
You don't talk about Steely Dan in this one.
Some of the things that we attack have been under attack generationally.
Yeah.
So it's not that. It's just the fact that there are things that we have to improve and we have to change and we have to mentally accept, whether it's a spiritual battle or not. We have to come to a place that we are just as at fault for creating this culture that allows this to be an accepted norm.
Yeah.
Because what you see is when you have this push, there's a divide. We've seen in this country over the last 5 to 10 years, there's a divide in almost every realm that is public, because we have created these pain points and it pushes people one side or the other. Everything is polarizing. And now when we have this created culture that everything becomes a divide, we're on one side of a debate.
Yep.
Whether we're right or whether we're not, we have chosen a side.
Yep.
And the essence of Christianity isn't a side, it's inclusion.
Yep.
And when we can move away from wanting to be right or wanting to be on the right side or all of those mentalities, and come to a place where we understand the spiritual aspect of it, that it becomes something that is challenging us or creating within us these predispositions to clash and chaos. When we can recognize it, then we become less accepting of the things that are wrong, but more accepting of the people who are making the choices and understand why they make those choices, because they are just like us. They're being forced to a side. And when I come to a point where I have been hurt by a side so much, I'm going to probably lean the other direction.
Yeah.
And that's what we see and so often.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tim, you're wise, and people were thinking that I was crazy whenever I said I'm going to talk about Lil Nas X in front of Tim. And you know what? You didn't disappoint. I learned a lot from you. Hopefully you learned a lot from me. Guys, this has been great. If you like the content, please like it. The comments, go ahead and comment that. If you disagree with something, or if you're like, oh man, that was great, go ahead and comment on that, and then subscribe. I'm Zach. This is Tim, and this is the end. All right, we'll see you later. Bye.